So welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Lab podcast. You probably have noticed it's just myself and Kimon here. We're kind of missing our normal three musketeers. But so Kimon, what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, well, we were having an interesting conversation earlier about the future of design technology. And I think we've recently seen some super interesting pieces of technology come out that a lot of people are intrigued by and a lot of people are scared of in the AI space and so on. You know, people having debates about whether or not AI art has soul, and some people freaking out that they're going to lose their jobs because, you know, AI is so amazing. And I think it's quite an interesting thing for us to be discussing.
Indeed. So just so you know, your hot take on the matter, what do you think about, say, AI enhancements or AI art, or just how do you think the industry is going and how do you feel personally about it?
I think personally, I'm a little bit afraid because I think there's different kinds of art. There's art that really connects to someone on a really deep level, something that can move a person to tears, and those pieces of work will never be replicable by artificial intelligence or any sort of, you know, machine learning system. But how important those pieces of art are in the business world, I don't know. You know, like you were mentioning yesterday, it's amazing to look at a painting from an expert painter that's created this masterpiece, but it's not really such a relevant thing in the world of business and especially moving into the future. So like the metaphor that I used to describe it was records and music. There's a lot of people that love record players and having music on record, which is great, and it's fine to be a purist in a certain sense, but 99% of the population's on Spotify or Apple Music. And that's kind of how I see art, AI generated art in the future, you know?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, yeah, from our conversation yesterday, I think there's pros and cons for everything. There are definitely areas where, you know, the AI technologies that we're starting to see nowadays, you know, ChatGPT being the most notable of these, or these AI art generators like Midjourney. Those are, I guess you could say, more controversial topics. But I think there's a great opportunity to really help enhance our own natural abilities if utilized correctly. And there is an element of ethics and responsibility that needs to be put into where, you know, we're looking at potentially job markets, say for instance in writing or being a journalist or writing blog posts, where you can generate SEO, search engine optimized posts and blogs and web copy in a flash, where that whole industry might take some strain, or at the very least there's going to be a bit of a paradigm shift as to how copywriters utilize the tool, help with the tool, help of the tool really make their work better. As far as, for instance, let's talk, say, logo design or just graphic design in general, I haven't seen too many really good cases of good what I'd consider good graphic design spat out by AI art generators at this point in time. But of course, given enough machine learning algorithm, who knows, that may change. But what I feel on, you know, we've had these kind of tools, but it may be something like we've been dealing with things like these logo generating tools for a while, which generates, you know, 5-6 logos at the press of a button. That's pretty generic. So we may get a little bit of an upgrade in that department. I've always held the mindset of, say, design as a form of employment, as a job, is incredibly oversaturated at the lower level because so many people think that this is completely easy, anybody can do it, and you know, there's an element of truth to that. But the faster you can get out of that lower bracket tier, that's everybody's fighting for scraps of food and it's just a race at the bottom, these AI tools may, you know, I guess you could say, functionally wipe out that tier where you have to be really good at what you do, or the robot is going to be better than you.
Yeah, and it's very much the same in music. Like you mentioned, you haven't seen any AI generated logos that genuinely solve a problem on a very human level, and it's the same with music. There's a lot of tools to write lyrics or create AI generated stuff, and it's just nowhere near what a human can output. It's just missing too much. So I think maybe we're quite far away from having artificial intelligence replace artists. But we're definitely living in a super interesting time in terms of, like you said, using those tools to our advantage to make us better creators. Like a great example of that is recently we recorded a podcast, the Entrepreneurs Anonymous podcast. So we had 8 people sitting around and we recorded them all through one microphone. And obviously, even in a treated studio, there was a lot of background sort of room noise. And afterwards, when we went back, we were a little bit upset at how bad the audio quality came out. And at the time, we didn't plan to sort of have lapel mics on everyone, which would have been the optimal solution. And very lucky for us, literally a couple weeks later, after recording this, Final Cut Pro released an update that had a new module attached to it for voice isolation. And it's insane. You literally click a little check mark box, and all of a sudden, it sounds like every person in the room is wearing a lapel mic. And it's the most advanced background noise removal I've ever heard. Because I've been in the sound space for a long time, and I've used every filter, compressor, EQ, noise gate you can think of on all different softwares. And the technology and the stuff that we're using now, even, you were mentioning the other day how Canva, never mind Photoshop, Canva's background removal tool, AI background removal tool is incredible. So these really advanced things that were super difficult and would take us as creators a long time to do back in the day, or would take special planning, it's just right at our fingertips nowadays.
Precisely. And I was talking about, how probably in the not too distant future we'll be seeing AI enhanced rotoscoping. So for visual effects artists and anyone who has to deal with motion graphics, that's going to make their life infinitely more easy. And I was going to lead to that because we've been speaking, there's a lot of conversation of AI at, I guess you could say, the highest level of replacing people in their entirety. But really the greatest things that AI has brought to us is really making the jobs of not just as creatives, because it's not only a tool for us, but just as the average working man and woman. There are now enhancements and tools that will help them do their jobs more effectively, and so they don't need to spend as much time doing the busy work that wastes a lot of time, and they can do the things that actually matter.
I mean, can you imagine an animator creating a scene and drawing a single frame with all the characters the way they've designed it, and then maybe an end frame, and then writing a brief into something like ChatGPT and saying, a bit of a description of what the scene is, and having AI just fill in all the different frames that go in between that. So the creator, the designer, the human being is coming up with the story, coming up with the color palette, the designs, and making you feel the way it feels. But then it completely takes out having to go frame by frame and move these on like wireframe puppets and so on, which would speed up so many things. It's such incredible technology.
Yeah, it would speed up a lot of things. Mind you, that's a completely different can of worms, especially because, keyframe animators, tweening animators, those are literal job descriptions, where in that case, we can run the risk of, now you've got a whole bunch of people that run the risk of losing their employment because their job has been flat out removed. But at the same time, we're seeing, discussions of, say, truck drivers and other forms of employment where, say, self-driving cars are going to remove. Yeah. So we're at this very interesting point where technology is, I'm not going to use the word self-aware or sentient. It's not that. Not at this juncture anyway. But we're at this point where job descriptions that have been, I guess you could say, fundamental for at least a generation or two are suddenly being phased out because they are no longer necessary. Yeah. And this is not the first time it's happened. Obviously, this is the first time we're talking this discussion with technology and software and AI, but this is no different for when, say, automations and robots started entering factory floors, where suddenly you need less people in a factory because the robot can do the same weld time and time and time again without sleeping, minus maintenance time. But we're seeing something similar. It's pretty much the exact same thing, really, but in a AI sense and not a hardcore mechanical sense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, another good example would be, how many people do you think it took to tend a farm before tractors were invented? All of those jobs got collapsed into one skilled driver. a lot of the time, and that's gonna happen for the rest of our existence, as far as I can tell, you know. So I think a good point to look at on the bright side of things is, as many jobs as we lose through new technology and as many sort of spaces that close off, new ones are continuously opening, and access to information for the majority of the world is at an all-time high in the history of humanity. So learning these new tools, I mean, it's accessible to anyone. You can just go on your phone and use these AI tools to make your job easier no matter what you're doing.
And just I wanted to touch on, but you know, because we don't have too much time. You mentioned just right at the beginning, you know, there's features that you love that are helping you, but there's also features that scare you. So what are the things that personally scare you about the technology?
I think it's probably the skills that I get paid for, that creatives get paid for, that are not necessarily your field of expertise. So my main field of study is sound engineering and videography and video editing. Those are my hardest skills, the ones that I've dedicated the most amount of time to. But a big portion of my job also involves copywriting and pre-production, as an example. So it's not something that I'm good enough at to be better than artificial intelligence where it is currently, but I am good enough at it to have that be a monetizable skill. So some of my lower proficiency skills, I have a fear of losing those to something, like you said, weeding out the average designers from the great designers. If you want to have a job in design, you have to be a great designer. So if I'm making a percentage of my money from copywriting, as an example, you know, I'm going to lose those things unless I become exceptionally good at copywriting. Because at the moment, you know, the only people that are really beating the content that ChatGPT, as an example, can put out are people that are specialized writers, you know? So I think that's the part that scares me.
Mm-hmm. I think with that conversation, like, I think that kind of leads into, it's a matter of comboing your brain, your human mind, and all its idiosyncrasies and unique personality and then pairing that with the AI tool to help, I wouldn't say as a crutch, but as I guess you could say like it's an enhancement. So, you know, you were mentioning with like copywriting or screenplay, I'd say we're still a ways off as far as pure creativity is concerned. That AI, because it is such a human thing, and the bottom line with machine learning algorithms and tech of this nature, I'd say the people who are mostly at threat are, I guess, you know, it's like the left brain stuff with pure analytics, because the human brain is not going to be nearly as fast as a computer when it comes down to spitting out logic and pure facts. Mind you, it's only as good as the AI model that's trained on and the information that it pulls from. But those are the areas where I'd say AI has the most strength. But when it comes down to the literal human element, and this is where the right brain, the creatives, have their domain, you know, it's something completely different. And AI, at least for the time being, can kind of like imagine, you know, if I'm not using the word imagine, but guess that, okay, this is what a car looks like, so you know, this is maybe what a futuristic car could look like, kind of.
But in the back end, it's just an average of everything it's read online.
Precisely. And with these AI generated tools, which is where the ethics of use, and you know, this is another conversation for another day, where, you know, is AI art unique, or is it, you know, the whole copyright behind it is, you know, using images to train these machine learning algorithms? We'll leave that for another time. But at the end of the day, the AI model needs to be trained on something true human intuition and gut feeling and emotion and heart. Those are things that the machine, at least for the time being, until we reach, you know, the sci-fi levels of androids, that's not going to be able to be replicated. And I think those are the areas that humans need to further in. And really, I guess as a creative in these kind of industries, that's where you need to double down, is the human element and the strengths of what you as a living, breathing person with a functional mind can do, because the day-by-day tasks that you may do in order to do your job or may be simplified or phased out because of these enhancements. So
exactly.
these conversations, I'd say, kind of spin right back around to it's learning to, because this technology is not going to go away unless the internet in its entirety suddenly goes kapoof, which I hope doesn't happen, because then we're all a bit screwed here. But until that day happens, this technology is not going away. So it's a matter of how do we live with the technology, use it responsibly, and looking for the best opportunities on how to use that tech to better ourselves and in our own craft and trade.
Before we end off, do you think that it's important for us as creatives to dedicate a lot of time to keeping up with the latest technologies in artificial intelligence and being able to actually use them and leverage them to our advantage? Or would that time maybe be better spent honing in our more human creative skills?
I would say personally the simple answer is it depends. You do need, in this line of work, you do need to keep your finger on the pulse and on that zeitgeist of what's happening in the world and where it's going, because otherwise you will fall by the wayside and be forgotten. You do need to be aware of those. But if you should be absolutely not focused, but fanatic,
trying to be on the forefront of
it all
technology.
the time. Technology is moving at such a pace nowadays that it's almost impossible to completely keep up. So you do need to draw a line somewhere where, okay, I'm keeping up to it, maybe a weekly or monthly news feed of, okay, what are the latest developments, and looking for opportunities to where that can help you, and just having an understanding, or at the very least a high level understanding of what's going on, but not getting too distracted by technology and trying to be the first and trying to do everything and not working on your own craft, because now it's kind of like shiny object syndrome in a way.
Exactly, Awesome. Well, I think you made some really good points, and I would agree with you. I think it's a good place to end it off.
Probably.
Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll chat to you next time.
If you've got any thoughts, if you have your own personal opinions about like AI as a tech or any other sort of technology that's being developed, and you have a very personal thought, leave it in the comments section. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any questions that you maybe want us to discuss and talk about on the show, please leave that in the comment section. Otherwise, as the bog standard usual, to be sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to hear more about it, you know where we are.
Cool. Peace.
Peace.